There are films that just by their very nature require visual effects, and this is because it would be impossible to make them otherwise, for example, sci-fi movies, monster movies, and of course every single Marvel movie ever made. But whereas Marvel films are criticized for overusing the effects, movies like the Pirates of the Caribbean aren't, even though they too used the effects in almost every shot. Now, it probably won't surprise you to learn that a massive cannon fight between galleons at sea wasn't done with real ships on the ocean, or that ships rising out of the ocean, Jack Sparrow turning into a skeleton, or a man with an octopus for a face weren't actually real. But what actually might surprise you is the level of technical knowledge, attention to detail, and complexity that is involved in making us believe that they were. For example, did you know that the mixture of Davy Jones's tentacles actually came from scanning a dirty styrofoam coffee cup? Complexity, a scene that perhaps demonstrates best the complexity involved in the VFX of Pirates of the Caribbean is the ghost shark scene in Dead Manel. No Tales. This scene actually had to be shot in 3 different locations. One was on an island location shot with the drone and used for the various backgrounds of the scene. Another shot was in a small water tank in front of a blue screen. This part was used when the actors or the boat had to directly interact with the water, and the last was on an interior blue screen soundtage with the rowboat on a gimbal. Different parts of these 3 shots were then composited along with CG water elements, and of course the digital ghost shark models, which were made by scanning the practical puppets used on set and then doing a digital takeover where they impact with the water, which was also CG. Technical know-how, new software and tools were developed for every Pirates of the Caribbean film in order to solve different problems. In this scene at the World's End, Digital Domain used their award-winning software Sim to enable artists to composite different layers of debris that could interact seamlessly with the actors filmed on the blue screen sound stage. For this scene on the Stranger Tides, in order to apply different rings to each rope to allow for different types of animation, NPC developed the new technology they made to animate the Nagini character in the Harry Potter films. They also developed a new explinivolver called Curve Sampler node, which allowed the rope to travel along the path to the spline without stretching, and gave animators and control and confidence that the action would stay where they were keyed even if the other parts of the rope were moving. In Dead Men Tell No Tales, the thousands of hairs on Salazar's head needed to collide and interact with each other, but they also needed to be directable. NPC developed new tools to allow animators to control the performance of the hair, whilst maintaining the physical simulations that kept it looking natural. Attention to detail, as we mentioned earlier, the texture of Davy Jones's tentacles was made from a scan of a styrofoam coffee cup, but Davy Jones wasn't the only character to receive so much attention to detail. In the first film had to be recognizable when they were seen in their skeletal form. This was done by starting with a generic skull and modifying it for each actor's face. The modeling team then built a model to achieve the desired look for the Decomost Skin View. Painters then scanned a sample of the skin created by the modeling team and used it to apply the decaying flesh look on the digital skull. Each pirate also had to have a distinct level of decomposition and their own specific texture. For example, for the pirate Pinel, they took digital photos of turkey jerky and used that to add texture to his skull. Not only did the skeletons have to resemble the actors, but they also had to move like them. This was done by shooting a live-action plate of every skeleton scene, then shooting a clean plate and then using the live-action plates to reference each actor's movements. This level of attention to detail was continued in Dead Man's Chest and at the World's End, and not only with Davy Jones, but also with the Flying Dutchman crew. Each crew member had to have his own distinctive look, and even though they had no real dialogue and only really appeared in action scenes, the VFX team still included a history that each character's look development, starting on the basis that the crew lived at the bottom of the sea and had mutated. They began designing the crew members to be covered in mollusks and shells, but they soon realized that in order for them to be realistic, they had to at least resemble the actors playing them, so they picked different sea creatures to match each actor's physical attributes and personality. The attention to detail applied to every aspect, the drive to improve and strive for perfection, and the unwillingness to settle for anything less is what made the visual effects and the Pirates of the Caribbean films themselves so good. They built a franchise that could have had more than 5 films, but unfortunately won't, because did That's Me, I Won't Be 6. Dr. Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is one movie that would have been pretty tricky to pull off without the use of the effects, actually probably impossible aside from all the background imagery being literally out of this world and being able to walk through environments where gravity doesn't care. That's weird. The light hits him before it hits her. Surely if she's in front of him it should hit her before it hits him. Is that a mistake? Yeah, anyway, aside from all the otherworldly gravity defying scenery, Dr. Strange's magnificent magical powers would have just looked silly. Yeah, so let's take a look at some of the VFX in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness to find out just what they did to make it look so awesome. In order to create the ruined world's digital domain, began by designing 2 separate realities. One was based on the New York City that we all know, and the other was based on a Victoria-inspired version of New York. Next, their artists added assets to match each world, and including buildings, landmarks, and even the director Sam Raimi owned 1973 Oldsmobile Delta 88. In fact, this car has appeared in all of Sam Raimi's movies, and in this movie it appears twice, once in this ruined world scene and once as a monster truck when Wanda meets her kids again. The VFX team also had to recreate physical sets digitally to bring collisions down to the street level, to add set extensions. And the Cloak of Levitation, the apple orchard scene, was actually filmed on a real farm in England, but due to rescheduling because of COVID, the trees weren't actually in bloom when they came to film there, so the practical effects team had to tediously tie thousands of fake blossoms to the trees, and thousands more were added later digitally. What a job! The transformation sequence begins with an effect similar to the Heckle magic effect that appears in WandaVision Ion, but with a more powerful, corrupt and chaotic feel to it. The plates for the sequence after the transformation was complete were shot on a blue screen soundstage with a few physical props that were then digitally enhanced later. For the Khmer Taj battle, Wanda steps into a trap where mirrors and reflections a prison. For this effect, Digital Domain decided to create a smaller, more compact version of the mirror dimension that was introduced in the first film. For the live-action components of the scene, several versions of Wanda reacting in different ways were shot on a green screen soundstage. Digitally doubled were also created to push through the mirrors and reflections. When Wanda fires the hex bolt, the mirror shatters and create these shards that were generated in Houdini. Trickster provided ATV effect shots over a 4-month period, and majority of work was on the Dreamwalk scene. Trickster created digital ceilings, the Mont Wonder Dagor spirits, and CG candles and candlelight. On the practical set, a stand-in Dr. Strange touch to wires was jerked about like a unwanted floppy ragdoll to give the body convincing weight and motion. Christine ends up using the brazier of Bomb Goliath, which produces a massive ball of fire. The live-action version of this was basically just a big lead torch, and Trickster had to turn its white light into a fiery amber and enhance the mouth of the brazier for lighting interaction. But perhaps the most complicated thing they had to achieve was to make us believe that America Shavish Starshaw portals were real, that there really was a zombie Doctor Strange, that the Cloak of Levitation could magically fly and could express its own personality, that it was actually made from real cloth, and perhaps hardest of all, but people would forget that the VXS were there at all. Now, if you're looking to quickly enhance your projects with some VXS, but don't really have the time to go creating them all yourself, then let me introduce you to Action Effects, whose library of drag and drop effects can help take your project to the next level in a very easy way. Whether it's gun muzzle flashes, smoke and debris explosions, they've got pretty much everything. So if you're interested, click the link in our video description and grab yourself some of these awesome VFX that'll take your project to the next level.